Welcome to the New Student Pharmacists podcast experience. We are so glad you are listening in. Know that you belong wherever your community, values, passion, and hard work coincide. This is an academic community, and you are not alone, and you are worth the hard work it takes to achieve your academic aspirations. Note, the views of this podcast represent those of my guest, and I note, purpose of these episodes not at all, for advice or medical suggestions. These are aimed to provide support for peer pharmacists in training in educational and intellectually stimulating ways. Again, these are not at all for medical advice, or for medical suggestions. Please see your local state and board-certified physician, PA, or NP, and pharmacist for medical advice and suggestions. Today we will be reviewing the top 300 drugs using a canonical game such as this. Welcome to the concentration game. We'll be testing your memory and knowledge of the top 300 drugs, organized by different pathophysiological classes. The categories include gastrointestinal, musculoskeletal, respiratory, immune, neurological, cardiovascular, and endocrine. Today, we will focus on one category at a time. Let's start with the cardiovascular class. Remember, we will name one drug at a time with no repeats. Are you ready? Let's go. Cardiovascular class. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 1, warfarin, also known as Coumadin. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 2, atorvastatin, also known as Lipitor. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 3, lisinopril, also known as Prinival or Zestril. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 4, metoprolol, also known as low-pressor or Toprol XL. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 5, amlodipine, also known as Norvasc. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 6, clopidogrel, also known as Plavix. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 7, losartan, also known as Cozar. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 8, simvastatin, also known as Zocor. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 9, hydrochlorothiazide, also known as Microzide. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 10, carvedilol, also known as Coreg. Transition. Great job. Now, let's move on to the next category. Shuffle the cards and get ready for the endocrine class. Are you ready? Let's go. Endocrine class. Endocrine class. Drug number 1, glympyride, also known as Amaryl. Endocrine class. Drug number 2, glipizide, also known as Glucotrol. Endocrine class. Drug number 3, glyburide, also known as Micronase. Endocrine class. Drug number 4, pioglitazone, also known as Actose. Endocrine class. Drug number 5, exenatide, also known as Byada. Endocrine class. Drug number 6, liraglutide, also known as Victoza. Endocrine class. Drug number 7, alendronate, also known as Fosamax. Endocrine class. Drug number 8, ibandronate, also known as Boniva. Endocrine class. Drug number 9, risedronate, also known as Actinol. Endocrine class. Drug number 10, estradiol/norethindrone, also known as Combi patch. Transition. Well done. Now, shuffle the cards again, and let's get ready for the gastrointestinal class. Are you ready? Let's go. Gastrointestinal class. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 1, omeprazole, also known as Prilosec. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 2, pantoprazole, also known as Protonix. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 3, esomeprazole, also known as Nexium. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 4, lansoprazole, also known as Prevacid. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 5, ranitidine, also known as Zantac. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 6, famotidine, also known as Pepcid. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 7, metoclopramide, also known as Reglan. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 8, ondansetron, also known as Zofran. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 9, dicyclamine, also known as Bentyl. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 10, sucralfate, also known as Carafate. Transition, great job. Now, shuffle the cards again and prepare for the musculoskeletal class. Are you ready? Let's go. Musculoskeletal class. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 1, ibuprofen, also known as Advil or Motrin. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 2, naproxen, also known as Aleve or Naproxen. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 3, diclofenac, also known as Voltaren. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 4, celecoxib, also known as Celebrex. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 5, meloxicam, also known as Mobic. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 6, cyclobenzaprine, also known as Flexeril. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 7, baclofen, also known as Lyresil. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 8, methocarbamol, also known as Robaxin. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 9, carisoprodol, also known as Soma. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 10, tizanidine, also known as Zanaflex. Transition, well done. Shuffle the cards again and get ready for the respiratory class. Are you ready? Let's go. Respiratory class. Respiratory class. Drug number 1, albuterol, also known as Proair or Ventolin. Respiratory class. Drug number 2, fluticasone, also known as Flovent. Respiratory class. Drug number 3, budesonide, also known as Pulmicort. Respiratory class. Drug number 4, montelukast, also known as Singulair. Respiratory class. Drug number 5, Tiotropium, also known as Spiriva. Respiratory class. Drug number 6, ipratropium, also known as Atrovent. Respiratory class. Drug number 7, salmeterol, also known as Ceravent. Respiratory class. Drug number 8, montesone, also known as Nasonex. Respiratory class. Drug number 9, cromolyn, also known as Intol. Respiratory class. Drug number 10, omalizumab, also known as Xolair. Transition, nice work. Now, shuffle the cards and prepare for the immune class. Are you ready? Let's go. Immune class. Immune class. Drug number 1, adalimumab, also known as Humira. Immune class. Drug number 2, etanercept, also known as Enbrel. Immune class. Drug number 3, infliximab, also known as Remicade. Immune class. Drug number 4, rituximab, also known as Rituxan. Immune class. Drug number 5, abatacept, also known as Orencia. Immune class. Drug number 6, tocilizumab, also known as Actemra. Immune class. Drug number 7, ustekinumab, also known as Stelara. Immune class. Drug number 8, secukinumab, also known as Cosentyx. Immune class. Drug number 9, ixekizumab, also known as Taltz. Immune class. Drug number 10, gazelkumab, also known as Tremfya. Transition. Great job. Now, shuffle the cards and get ready for the neurological class. Are you ready? Let's go. Neurological class. Neurological class. Drug number 1, gabapentin, also known as Neurontin. Neurological class. Drug number 2, pregabalin, also known as Lyrica. Neurological class. Drug number 3, topiramate, also known as Topamax. Neurological class. Drug number 4, levetiracetam, also known as Keppra. Neurological class. Drug number 5, lamotrigine, also known as Lamictal. Neurological class. Drug number 6, Devalproex, also known as Depakote. Neurological class. Drug number 7, phenytoin, also known as Dilantin. Neurological class. Drug number 8, carbamazepine, also known as Tegretol. Neurological class. Drug number 9, oxcarbazepine, also known as Trileptal. Neurological class. Drug number 10, zonisamide, also known as Zongran. Concentration game categories. Brand, generic, indication, mechanism of action. Let's go. 1. Lipitor O brand. Lipitor O generic. Atorvastatin O indication. Dyslipidemia O mechanism of action. HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor 2. Plavix O brand. Plavix O generic. Clopidogrel O indication. Antiplatelet O mechanism of action. P2Y12 platelet inhibitor 3. Nexium O brand. Nexium O generic. Esomeprazole O indication. GERD O mechanism of action. Proton pump inhibitor 4. Lantus O brand. Lantus O generic. Insulin glargine O indication. Diabetes mellitus O mechanism of action. Long-acting insulin 5. Advair Discos O brand. Advair Discos O generic. Fluticasone/salmeterol O indication. Asthma/COPD O mechanism of action. Corticosteroid/beta-2 agonist 6. Abilify O brand. Abilify O generic. Aripiprazole O indication. Schizophrenia/bipolar disorder O mechanism of action. Dopamine partial agonist 7. Seroquel O brand. Seroquel O generic. Quishapine O indication. Schizophrenia/bipolar disorder O mechanism of action. Atypical antipsychotic 8. Crestor O brand. Crestor O generic. Rosuvastatin O indication. Dyslipidemia O mechanism of action. HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor 9. Humira O brand. Humira O generic. Adalimumab O indication. Rheumatoid arthritis O mechanism of action. TNF-alpha inhibitor 10. Inbrolo brand. Inbrolo generic. Adanercept O indication. Rheumatoid arthritis O mechanism of action. TNF-alpha inhibitor 11. Remicade O brand. Remicade O generic. Infliximab O indication. Crohn's disease/ulcerative colitis O mechanism of action. TNF-alpha inhibitor 12. Lyrica O brand. Lyrica O generic. Pregabalin O indication. Neuropathic pain O mechanism of action. GABA analog 13. Zyprexa O brand. Zyprexa O generic. Olanzapine O indication. Schizophrenia/bipolar disorder O mechanism of action. Atypical antipsychotic 14. Symbicort O brand. Symbicort O generic. Budesonide/formoterol O indication. Asthma/COPD O mechanism of action. Corticosteroid/beta-2 agonist 15. Celebrex O brand. Celebrex O generic. Celecoxib O indication. Pain/inflammation O mechanism of action. COX-2 inhibitor 16. Cymbalta O brand. Cymbalta O generic. Duloxetine O indication. Depression/anxiety O mechanism of action. SNRI 17. Spiriva O brand. Spiriva O generic. Tiotropium O indication. COPD O mechanism of action. Anticholinergic 18. Januvia O brand. Januvia O generic. Sitagliptin O indication. Diabetes mellitus O mechanism of action. DPP-4 inhibitor 19. Vyvanse O brand. Vyvanse O generic. Lisdexamfetamine O indication. ADHD O mechanism of action. CNS stimulant 20. Zacia O brand. Zacia O generic. Ezetimibe O indication. Dyslipidemia O mechanism of action. Cholesterol absorption inhibitor 21. Xarelto O brand. Xarelto O generic. Rivaroxaban O indication. Anticoagulant O mechanism of action. Factor XA inhibitor 22. Victoza O brand. Victoza O generic. Liraglutide O indication. Diabetes mellitus O mechanism of action. GLP-1 agonist 23. Forteo O brand. Forteo O generic. Teriparatide O indication. Osteoporosis O mechanism of action. PTH analog 24. Tamiflu O brand. Tamiflu O generic. Oseltamivir O indication. Influenza O mechanism of action. Neuraminidase inhibitor 25. Gleevec O brand. Gleevec O generic. Imatinib O indication. Leukemia O mechanism of action. Tyrosine kinase inhibitor 26. Truvada O brand. Truvada O generic. Emtricitabine/tenofovir O indication. HIV O mechanism of action. NRTI 27. Prevacid O brand. Prevacid O generic. Lansoprazole O indication. GERD O mechanism of action. Proton pump inhibitor 28. Pristic O brand. Pristic O generic. Desvenlafaxine O indication. Depression O mechanism of action. SNRI 29. Boniva O brand. Boniva O generic. Ibandronate O indication. Osteoporosis O mechanism of action. Bisphosphonate 30. eVista O brand. eVista O generic. Raloxifene O indication. Osteoporosis O mechanism of action. SCRM Prozac brand. Prozac generic. Fluoxetine indication. Depression mechanism of action. SSRI Singulair brand. Singulair generic. Montelukast indication. Asthma/allergies mechanism of action. Leukotriene receptor antagonist Flomax brand. Flomax generic. Tonsillosin indication. BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, mechanism of action, alpha-1 blocker Vitarin brand. Vitarin generic, ezetimibe/simvastatin indication, dyslipidemia mechanism of action, cholesterol absorption inhibitor/HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor OxyContin brand. OxyContin generic, oxycodone indication, pain mechanism of action, opioid agonist Lexapro brand. Lexapro generic, escitalopram indication, depression/anxiety mechanism of action, SSRI Lunsta brand. Lunsta generic, esophiclone indication, insomnia mechanism of action, GABA receptor agonist. Imitrex brand. Imitrex generic, sumatriptan indication, migraine mechanism of action, serotonin receptor agonist Detrol brand. Detrol generic, tolterodine indication, overactive bladder mechanism of action, anticholinergic Zalatan brand. Zalatan generic, latanoprost indication, glaucoma mechanism of action, prostaglandin analog Chalice brand. Chalice generic, tadalafil indication, erectile dysfunction mechanism of action, PDE5 inhibitor Levaquin brand. Levaquin generic, levofloxacin indication, bacterial infections mechanism of action, fluoroquinolone antibiotic Actos brand. Actos generic, pioglitazone indication, diabetes mellitus mechanism of action, thiazolidinediene Zacia brand. Zacia generic, ezetimibe indication, dyslipidemia mechanism of action, cholesterol absorption inhibitor Combivent brand. Combivent generic, ipratropium/albuterol indication, COPD mechanism of action, anticholinergic/beta-2 agonist Nispan brand. Nispan generic, niacin indication, dyslipidemia mechanism of action, lipid-lowering agent Fosamax brand. Fosamax generic, alendronate indication, osteoporosis mechanism of action, bisphosphonate Bistolich brand. Bistolich generic, nebivolol indication, hypertension mechanism of action, beta blocker Omnicef brand. Omnicef generic, cefdinir indication, bacterial infections mechanism of action, cephalosporin antibiotic Giadon brand. Giadon generic, ziprasidone indication, schizophrenia/bipolar disorder mechanism of action, atypical antipsychotic Zofran brand. Zofran generic, ondansetron indication, nausea/vomiting mechanism of action, serotonin receptor antagonist Lamictal brand. Lamictal generic, lamotrigine indication, seizures/bipolar disorder mechanism of action, sodium channel blocker Diflucan brand. Diflucan generic, fluconazole indication, fungal infections mechanism of action, azole antifungal Topamax brand. Topamax generic, topiramate indication, seizures/migraine prevention mechanism of action, anti-epileptic Protonix brand. Protonix generic, pantoprazole indication, GERD mechanism of action, proton pump inhibitor Chantix brand. Chantix generic, varenicline indication, smoking cessation mechanism of action, nicotinic receptor partial agonist Adderall XR brand. Adderall XR generic, amphetamine/dextroamphetamine indication, ADHD. Mechanism of action, CNS stimulant Vesicare brand. Vesicare generic, sulfasalazine indication, overactive bladder mechanism of action, anticholinergic Aricept brand. Aricept generic, Dunfazil indication, Alzheimer's disease mechanism of action, acetylcholinesterase inhibitor Tamiflu brand. Tamiflu generic, oseltamivir indication, influenza mechanism of action, neuraminidase inhibitor Zyrtec brand, Zyrtec generic, ketorizin indication, allergies mechanism of action, antihistamine Lyresil brand, Lyresil generic, baclofen indication, muscle spasticity mechanism of action, GABA agonist Remicade brand, Remicade generic, infliximab indication, autoimmune diseases mechanism of action, TNF-alpha inhibitor Requip brand, Requip generic, ropinirole indication, Parkinson's disease/RLS mechanism of action, dopamine agonist Actinol brand, Actinol generic, risdronate indication, osteoporosis mechanism of action, bisphosphonate Valtrex brand, Valtrex generic, valacyclovir indication, viral infections mechanism of action, antiviral Spiriva brand, Spiriva generic, Sheotropium indication, COPD mechanism of action, anticholinergic Cymbalta brand, Cymbalta generic, duloxetine indication, depression/anxiety mechanism of action, SNRI orthotricycline brand, orthotricycline generic, ethinyl estradiol/norgestimate indication, contraception mechanism of action, estrogen/progestin Lantus brand, Lantus generic, insulin glargine indication, diabetes mellitus mechanism of action, long-acting insulin Nexium brand, Nexium generic, esomeprazole indication, GERD mechanism of action, proton pump inhibitor Namenda brand, Namenda generic, memantine indication, Alzheimer's disease mechanism of action, NMDA receptor antagonist Xyloprim brand, Xyloprim generic, allopurinol indication, gout mechanism of action, xanthine oxidase inhibitor Evista brand, Evista generic, raloxifene indication, osteoporosis mechanism of action, SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulator, Stratera brand, Stratera generic, atomoxetine indication, ADHD mechanism of action, norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor Lotrel brand, Lotrel generic, amlodipine/benazepro indication, hypertension mechanism of action, calcium channel blocker/ACE inhibitor Humalog brand, Humalog generic, insulin lispro indication, diabetes mellitus mechanism of action, rapid-acting insulin Toprol XL brand, Toprol XL generic, metoprolol succinate indication, hypertension mechanism of action, beta blocker Januvia brand, Januvia generic, sitagliptin indication, diabetes mellitus mechanism of action, DPP-4 inhibitor Viagra brand, Viagra generic, sildenafil indication, erectile dysfunction mechanism of action, PDE5 inhibitor Zoloft brand, Zoloft generic, sertraline indication, depression/anxiety mechanism of action, SSRI Effexor XR brand, Effexor XR generic, venlafaxine indication, depression/anxiety mechanism of action, SNRI Crestor brand, Crestor generic, rosuvastatin indication, dyslipidemia mechanism of action, HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor Lopressor brand, Lopressor generic, metoprolol tartrate indication, hypertension mechanism of action, beta blocker Byetta brand, Byetta generic, exenatide indication, diabetes mellitus, mechanism of action, GLP-1 receptor agonist Advil brand, Advil generic, ibuprofen indication, pain/inflammation mechanism of action, NSAID Aleve brand, Aleve generic, naproxen indication, pain/inflammation mechanism of action, NSAID Klonopin brand. Klonopin generic. Clonazepam indication. Seizures/anxiety mechanism of action. Benzodiazepine Ativan brand. Ativan generic. Lorazepam indication. Anxiety mechanism of action. Benzodiazepine Norvasc brand. Norvasc generic. Amlodipine indication. Hypertension mechanism of action. Calcium channel blocker Concerta-O brand. Concerta-O generic. Methylphenidate-O indication. ADHD-O mechanism of action. CNS stimulant Fosamax-O brand. Fosamax-O generic. Alendronate-O indication. Osteoporosis-O mechanism of action. Bisphosphonate Vesicare-O brand. Vesicare-O generic. Sulfasalazine-O indication. Overactive bladder-O mechanism of action. Antimuscarinic Proscar-O brand. Proscar-O generic. Finasteride-O indication. BPH-O mechanism of action. 5-alpha reductase inhibitor Tamiflu-O brand. Tamiflu-O generic. Oseltamivir-O indication. Influenza-O mechanism of action. Neuraminidase inhibitor Abilify-O brand. Abilify-O generic. Aripiprazole-O indication. Schizophrenia/bipolar disorder-O mechanism of action. Atypical antipsychotic Xarelto-O brand. Xarelto-O generic. Rivaroxaban-O indication. Anticoagulation-O mechanism of action. Factor XA inhibitor Chantix-O brand. Chantix-O generic. Varenicline-O indication. Smoking cessation-O mechanism of action. Nicotinic receptor partial agonist Lumigan-O brand. Lumigan-O generic. Bimetoprost-O indication. Glaucoma-O mechanism of action. Prostaglandin analog Arimidex brand. Arimidex generic. Anastrozole indication. Breast cancer mechanism of action. Aromatase inhibitor Exelon brand. Exelon generic. Ribostigmine indication. Alzheimer's disease mechanism of action. Cholinesterase inhibitor Boniva brand. Boniva generic. Ibandronate indication. Osteoporosis mechanism of action. Bisphosphonate Benicar brand. Benicar generic. Olmesartan indication. Hypertension mechanism of action. ARB. Angiotensin II receptor blocker. Flovent brand. Flovent generic. Fluticasone indication. Asthma mechanism of action. Corticosteroid Onglyza brand. Onglyza generic. Saxagliptin indication. Diabetes mellitus mechanism of action. DPP-4 inhibitor Jardiance brand. Jardiance generic. Empagliflozin indication. Diabetes mellitus. Mechanism of action. SGLT2 inhibitor Lunsta brand. Lunsta generic. Esophiclone indication. Insomnia mechanism of action. Non-benzodiazepine hypnotic Imitrex brand. Imitrex generic. Sumatriptan indication. Migraine mechanism of action. Serotonin receptor agonist Nasonex brand. Nasonex generic. Montesone indication. Allergic rhinitis mechanism of action. Corticosteroid Symbicort brand. Symbicort generic. Budesonide/formoterol indication. Asthma/COPD mechanism of action. Corticosteroid/LABA. Long-acting beta agonist. Vitarin brand. Vitarin generic. Ezetimibe/simvastatin indication. Dyslipidemia mechanism of action. Cholesterol absorption inhibitor/HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor Bistolich brand. Bistolich generic. Nebivolol indication. Hypertension mechanism of action. Beta blocker Chillis brand. Chillis generic. Tadalafil indication. Erectile dysfunction mechanism of action. PDE5 inhibitor Xanax brand. Xanax generic. Alprazolam indication. Anxiety mechanism of action. Benzodiazepine Pradaxa brand. Pradaxa generic. Dabigatran indication. Anticoagulation mechanism of action. Direct thrombin inhibitor Protonix brand. Protonix generic. Pantoprazole indication. GERD mechanism of action. Proton pump inhibitor Prozac brand. Prozac generic. Fluoxetine indication. Depression/anxiety mechanism of action. SSRI Zofran brand. Zofran generic. Ondansetron indication. Nausea/vomiting mechanism of action. 5-HT3 receptor antagonist Plaquenil brand. Plaquenil generic. Hydroxychloroquine indication. Rheumatoid arthritis/lupus mechanism of action. Immunomodulator Adderall brand. Adderall generic. Amphetamine/dextroamphetamine indication. ADHD mechanism of action. CNS stimulant Coreg brand. Coreg generic. Carvedilol indication. Hypertension/heart failure mechanism of action. Beta blocker with alpha blocking activity Cymbalta brand. Cymbalta generic. Duloxetine indication. Depression/anxiety/neuropathic pain mechanism of action. SNRI. Serotonin. Norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. Lexapro brand. Lexapro generic. Escitalopram indication. Depression/anxiety mechanism of action. SSRI. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Norvasc brand. Norvasc generic. Amlodipine indication. Hypertension/angina mechanism of action. Calcium channel blocker Ventolin brand. Ventolin generic. Albuterol indication. Asthma/COPD mechanism of action. Short-acting beta agonist Voltaren brand. Voltaren generic. Diclofenac indication. Pain/inflammation mechanism of action. NSAID. Nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Zithromax brand. Zithromax generic. Azithromycin indication. Bacterial infection mechanism of action. Macrolide antibiotic Diflucan brand. Diflucan generic. Fluconazole indication. Fungal infection mechanism of action. Antifungal Lantus brand. Lantus generic. Insulin glargine indication. Diabetes mellitus mechanism of action. Long-acting insulin Singulair brand. Singulair generic. Montelukast. Indication. Asthma/allergic rhinitis mechanism of action. Leukotriene receptor antagonist Soma brand. Soma generic. Carisoprodol indication. Muscle spasm mechanism of action. Muscle relaxant Spiriva brand. Spiriva generic. Sheotropium indication. COPD mechanism of action. Anticholinergic Pristic brand. Pristic generic. Desvenlafaxine indication. Depression mechanism of action. SNRI. Serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. Vibramycin brand. Vibramycin generic. Doxycycline. Indication. Bacterial infection mechanism of action. Tetracycline antibiotic Bactrim brand. Bactrim generic. Sulfamethoxazole/trimethoprim indication. Bacterial infection mechanism of action. Sulfonamide antibiotic Wellbutrin brand. Wellbutrin generic. Bupropion indication. Depression/smoking cessation mechanism of action. NDRI. Norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitor. Claritin brand. Claritin generic. Loratadine indication. Allergic rhinitis mechanism of action. Antihistamine. Lyrica brand. Lyrica generic. Pregabalin indication. Neuropathic pain/fibromyalgia mechanism of action. GABA analog Topamax brand. Topamax generic. Topiramate indication. Epilepsy/migraine prophylaxis mechanism of action. anticonvulsant L-level brand, L-level generic, amitriptyline indication, depression mechanism of action, tricyclic antidepressant Flomax brand, Flomax generic, tamsulosin indication, BPH mechanism of action, alpha-1 blocker Lamictal brand, Lamictal generic, lamotrigine indication, epilepsy/bipolar disorder mechanism of action, anticonvulsant Ambien brand, Ambien generic, zolpidem indication, insomnia mechanism of action, non-benzodiazepine hypnotic Flagyl brand, Flagyl generic, metronidazole indication, bacterial infection mechanism of action, nitroimidazole antibiotic Xanaflex brand, Xanaflex generic, tizanidine indication, muscle spasm mechanism of action, muscle relaxant Paxil brand, Paxil generic, paroxetine indication, depression/anxiety mechanism of action, SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, Keppra brand, Keppra generic, levetiracetam indication, epilepsy mechanism of action, anticonvulsant Namenda brand, Namenda generic, memantine indication, Alzheimer's disease mechanism of action, NMDA receptor antagonist Diflucan brand, Diflucan generic, fluconazole indication, fungal infection mechanism of action, antifungal macrobid brand, Macrobid generic, nitrofurantoin indication, bacterial infection mechanism of action, antibiotic Ritalin brand, Ritalin generic, methylphenidate indication, ADHD mechanism of action, CNS stimulant Cardizem brand, Cardizem generic, diltiazem indication, hypertension/angina mechanism of action, calcium channel blocker Imitrex brand, Imitrex generic, sumatriptan indication, migraine mechanism of action, serotonin 5-HT1 receptor agonist Risperdal brand, Risperdal generic, risperidone indication, schizophrenia/bipolar disorder, mechanism of action, atypical antipsychotic Zyprexa brand, Zyprexa generic, olanzapine indication, schizophrenia/bipolar disorder mechanism of action, atypical antipsychotic Prilosec brand, Prilosec generic, omeprazole indication, GERD/peptic ulcer disease mechanism of action, proton pump inhibitor Adderall brand, Adderall generic, amphetamine/dextroamphetamine indication, ADHD/narcolepsy mechanism of action, CNS stimulant Zovirax brand, Zovirax generic, acyclovir indication, viral infection, herpes, mechanism of action, antiviral Aricept brand, Aricept generic, Dunfazil indication, Alzheimer's disease mechanism of action, acetylcholinesterase inhibitor Lunsta brand, Lunsta generic, esophiclone indication, insomnia mechanism of action, non-benzodiazepine hypnotic Avalox brand, Avalox generic, moxifloxacin indication, bacterial infection mechanism of action, fluoroquinolone antibiotic Detrol brand, Detrol generic, tolterodine indication, overactive, bladder mechanism of action, anticholinergic Lyresil brand, Lyresil generic, baclofen indication, muscle spasm mechanism of action, muscle relaxant Vitarin brand, Vitarin generic, ezetimibe/simvastatin indication, hyperlipidemia mechanism of action, cholesterol absorption inhibitor/statin Bisolich brand, Bisolich generic, nebivolol indication, hypertension mechanism of action, beta blocker Prevacid brand, Prevacid generic, lansoprazole indication, GERD/peptic ulcer disease, mechanism of action, Proton pump inhibitor Zantac brand. Zantac generic. Ranitidine indication. GERD/peptic ulcer disease mechanism of action. H2 receptor antagonist Truvada brand. Truvada generic. Emtricitabine/tenofovir indication. HIV infection mechanism of action. NRTI. Nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor. Deltasone brand. Deltasone generic. Prednisone indication. Inflammation/autoimmune conditions mechanism of action. Corticosteroid Plaquenil brand. Plaquenil generic. Hydroxychloroquine indication. Rheumatoid arthritis/malaria mechanism of action. Antimalarial/immunomodulator Celebrex brand. Celebrex generic. Selexib indication. Pain/inflammation mechanism of action. COX-2 inhibitor Mobic brand. Mobic generic. Meloxicam indication. Pain/inflammation mechanism of action. NSAID. Nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Crestor brand. Crestor generic. Rosuvastatin indication. Hyperlipidemia mechanism of action. HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor. OxyContin brand. OxyContin generic. Oxycodone indication. Pain mechanism of action. Opioid analgesic Abilify brand. Abilify generic. Aripiprazole indication. Schizophrenia/bipolar disorder mechanism of action. Atypical antipsychotic Lantus Solostar brand. Lantus Solostar generic. Insulin glargine indication. Diabetes mellitus mechanism of action. Long-acting insulin Symbicort brand. Symbicort generic. Budesonide/formoterol indication. Asthma/COPD mechanism of action. Corticosteroid/ long-acting beta agonist Levitra brand. Levitra generic. Vardenafil indication. Erectile dysfunction mechanism of action. PDE5 inhibitor Januvia brand. Januvia generic. Sitagliptin indication. Type 2 diabetes mechanism of action. DPP4 inhibitor Vesicare brand. Vesicare generic. Sulfenacin indication. Overactive bladder mechanism of action. Anticholinergic Concerta brand. Concerta generic. Methylphenidate indication. ADHD mechanism of action. CNS stimulant Nasonex brand. Nasonex generic. Montesone indication. Allergic rhinitis mechanism of action. Corticosteroid Bistolich brand. Bistolich generic. Nebivolol indication. Hypertension mechanism of action. Beta blocker Lovenox brand. Lovenox generic. Enoxaparin indication. Thromboprophylaxis mechanism of action. Low molecular weight heparin Xarelto brand. Xarelto generic. Rivaroxaban indication. Anticoagulation mechanism of action. Factor XA inhibitor Chillis brand. Chillis generic. Tadalafil indication. Erectile dysfunction mechanism of action. PDE5 inhibitor Imdur brand. Imdur generic. Isosorbide mononitrate indication. Angina pectoris mechanism of action. Nitrate Xanaflex brand. Xanaflex generic. Tizanidine indication. Muscle spasm mechanism of action. Muscle relaxant Vasotec brand. Vasotec generic. Enalapril indication. Hypertension/heart failure mechanism of action. ACE inhibitor Benicar brand. Benicar generic. Olmesartan indication. Hypertension mechanism of action. Angiotensin II receptor blocker. ARB. Mycardis brand. Mycardis generic. Telmisartan indication. Hypertension mechanism of action. Angiotensin II receptor blocker. ARB. Benicar HCT brand. Benicar HCT generic. Olmesartan/HCDZ indication. hypertension mechanism of action, angiotensin II receptor blocker, ARB/thiazide diuretic Cosar brand, Cosar generic, losartan indication, hypertension mechanism of action, angiotensin II receptor blocker, ARB, Diovan brand, Diovan. Generic, valsartan indication, hypertension/heart failure mechanism of action, angiotensin II receptor blocker, ARB, Hisar brand, Hisar generic, losartan/HCDZ indication, hypertension mechanism of action, angiotensin II receptor blocker, ARB/thiazide diuretic Valtrex brand, Valtrex generic, valacyclovir indication, viral infection, herpes, mechanism of action, antiviral Lamictal brand, Lamictal generic, lamotrigine indication, epilepsy/bipolar disorder mechanism of action, anticonvulsant Spiriva brand, Spiriva generic, Schiotropium indication, COPD mechanism of action, anticholinergic Januvia brand, Januvia generic, sitagliptin indication, type 2 diabetes mechanism of action, DPP-4 inhibitor Levitra brand, Levitra generic, vardenafil indication, erectile dysfunction mechanism of action, PDE5 inhibitor. Note: the views of this podcast represent those of my guest, S, and I note, purpose of these episodes not at all, for advice or medical suggestions. These are aimed to provide support for peer pharmacists in training in educational and intellectually stimulating ways. Again, these are not at all for medical advice, or for medical suggestions. Please see your local state and board certified physician, PA or NP, and pharmacist for medical advice and suggestions. Welcome to the concentration game. We'll be testing your memory and knowledge of the top 300 drugs, organized by different pathophysiological classes. The categories include gastrointestinal, musculoskeletal, respiratory, immune, neurological, cardiovascular, and endocrine. Today, we will focus on one category at a time. Let's start with the cardiovascular class. Remember, we will name one drug at a time with no repeats. Are you ready? Let's go. Cardiovascular class. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 1, warfarin, also known as Coumadin. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 2, atorvastatin, also known as Lipitor. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 3, lisinopril, also known as Prinival or Zestrol. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 4, metoprolol, also known as low pressor or Toprol XL. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 5, amlodipine, also known as Norvasc. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 6, clopidogrel, also known as Plavix. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 7, losartan, also known as Cosar. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 8, simvastatin, also known as Zocor. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 9, hydrochlorothiazide, also known as Microzide. Cardiovascular class. Drug number 10, carvedilol, also known as Coreg. Transition, great job. Now, let's move on to the next category. Shuffle the cards and get ready for the endocrine class. Are you ready? Let's go. Endocrine class. Endocrine class. Drug number 1, glympyride, also known as Amaryl. Endocrine class. Drug number 2, glipizide, also known as glucotrol. Endocrine class, drug number 3, glyburide, also known as micronase. Endocrine class, drug number 4, pioglitazone, also known as actose. Endocrine class, drug number 5, exenatide, also known as biota. Endocrine class, drug number 6, liraglutide, also known as Victoza. Endocrine class, drug number 7, alendronate, also known as Fosamax. Endocrine class, drug number 8, ivandronate, also known as Boniva. Endocrine class, drug number 9, risedronate, also known as Actinol. Endocrine class, drug number 10, estradiol/norethindrone, also known as COMB patch. Transition, well done. Now, shuffle the cards again, and let's get ready for the gastrointestinal class. Are you ready? Let's go. Gastrointestinal class. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 1, omeprazole, also known as Prilosec. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 2, pantoprazole, also known as Protonix. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 3, esomeprazole, also known as Nexium. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 4, lansoprazole, also known as Prevacid. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 5, ranitidine, also known as Zantac. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 6, famotidine, also known as Pepcid. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 7, metoclopramide, also known as Reglan. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 8, ondansetron, also known as Zofran. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 9, dicyclamine, also known as Bento. Gastrointestinal class. Drug number 10, sucralfate, also known as Carafate. Transition, great job. Now, shuffle the cards again and prepare for the musculoskeletal class. Are you ready? Let's go. Musculoskeletal class. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 1, ibuprofen, also known as Advil or Motrin. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 2, naproxen, also known as Aleve or naproxen. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 3, diclofenac, also known as Voltaren. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 4, celecoxib, also known as Celebrex. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 5, meloxicam, also known as Mobic. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 6, cyclobenzaprine, also known as Flexeril. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 7, baclofen, also known as Lyresil. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 8, methocarbamol, also known as Robaxin. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 9, carisoprodol, also known as Soma. Musculoskeletal class. Drug number 10, tizanidine, also known as Zanaflex. Transition, well done. Shuffle the cards again and get ready for the respiratory class. Are you ready? Let's go. Respiratory class. Respiratory class. Drug number 1, albuterol, also known as Proair or Ventolin. Respiratory class. Drug number 2, fluticasone, also known as Flovent. Respiratory class. Drug number 3, budesonide, also known as Pulmicort. Respiratory class, drug number 4, Montelukast, also known as Singulair. Respiratory class, drug number 5, Tiotropium, also known as Spiriva. Respiratory class, drug number 6, Ipratropium, also known as Atrovent. Respiratory class, drug number 7, Salmeterol, also known as Ceravent. Respiratory class, drug number 8, Montesone, also known as Nasonex. Respiratory class, drug number 9, Cromolyn, also known as Intol. Respiratory class, drug number 10, Omalizumab, also known as Xolair. Transition, nice work. Now, shuffle the cards and prepare for the immune class. Are you ready? Let's go. Immune class, drug number 1, Adalimumab, also known as Humira. Immune class, drug number 2, Etanercept, also known as Enbrel. Immune class, drug number 3, Infliximab, also known as Remicade. Immune class, drug number 4, Rituximab, also known as Rituxan. Immune class, drug number 5, Abatacept, also known as Orencia. Immune class, drug number 6, Tocilizumab, also known as Actemra. Immune class, drug number 7, Ustekinumab, also known as Stelara. Immune class, drug number 8, Secukinumab, also known as Cosentyx. Immune class, drug number 9, Ixekizumab, also known as Taltz. Immune class, drug number 10, Gazelkumab, also known as Tremfya. Transition, great job. Now, shuffle the cards and get ready for the neurological class. Are you ready? Let's go. Neurological class, drug number 1, Gabapentin, also known as Neurontin. Neurological class, drug number 2, Pregabalin, also known as Lyrica. Neurological class, drug number 3, Topiramate, also known as Topamax. Neurological class, drug number 4, Levetiracetam, also known as Keppra. Neurological class, drug number 5, Lamotrigine, also known as Lamictal. Neurological class, drug number 6, Devalproex, also known as Depakote. Neurological class, drug number 7, Phenytoin, also known as Dilantin. Neurological class, drug number 8, Carbamazepine, also known as Tegretol. Neurological class, drug number 9, Oxcarbazepine, also known as Trileptal. Neurological class, drug number 10, Zonisamide, also known as Zongran. Fantastic work, everyone. You've completed the concentration game for the top 300 drugs, organized by pathophysiological classes. Remember to keep practicing and have fun learning. Until next time, great job. Thanks for listening to the New Student Pharmacists podcast experience. We are so glad you were listening in. Know that you belong wherever your community, values, passion, and hard work coincide. This is an academic community, and you are not alone. Note, the views of this podcast represent those of my guest, S. And I note, purpose of these episodes not at all, for advice or medical suggestions. These are aimed to provide support for peer pharmacists in training in educational and intellectually stimulating ways. Again, these are not at all for medical advice, or for medical suggestions. Please see your local state and board certified physician, PA or NP, and pharmacist for medical advice and suggestions.